God be the glory. Of all the things we did, we put him first. I mean, very first. We owe it all to him. We can't enumerate his praises, but here we are. We hope that we did some things right that was satisfactory to him, and it was all good.
They could say they've seen the highest mountain, bottom of the deepest sea, but no one's ever seen a love like this. They could dig above the buried treasures where it's worth more than anything, but no one's ever seen a love like this.
When the Lord builds a house, and the building of the house was building of our lives, like she said, coming out with a Bible. Every time we would meet, we had to open that Bible and read and pray.
But that went into...
That went into marriage, you know what I mean? And to me, like I was telling you about walking, staying in the flow, that to me was what she created, I remember when I started traveling and I would go away and try to come back. And normally we would have devotions, whether morning or evening. And she would say to me after maybe a few days and there's no action on my part to call the devotions, she would say to me, "Aren't you going to have devotions?" I said, "No, you go ahead, you've been doing it." She says, "I'll do it when you're not there, but that's your role. That's your responsibility." Again, answering the call in the appropriate way, never trying to usurp, the authority. It's your place now. You do it. So again, flowing through the stream, staying there.
So having God at the center of our marriage has been everything for us. And thankfully, we grew up knowing God or having some type of relationship with God. But even moving out here to Los Angeles, our relationship and our understanding of really who he is and who he is to us we wouldn't have made it. We would not have made it, because you begin to understand, okay, I'm being attacked in this area. We need to pray. If you don't understand that, or if you feel like it's just your partner and it's not something operating in them, you're not going to know to pray, And so having God at the center of our marriage has been the foundation of it all.
God being at the center of marriage is, to me, it's vital to any healthy marriage. It sustains. I got to go into preacher mode a little bit. The Bible tells us that only what you do for Christ will last. And so anything that you do that he's involved in. And the Bible also tells us in everything that you do it as unto the Lord. So in everything that we do it unto him, including this marriage. So it has no choice but to be sustained because we're doing it unto him, with him as the center. And that's sustaining us. But now we also want to go beyond just being sustained. We want to see fruits. We want it to be bountiful. We want it to be something that we can be an example for other people. And as I understand that God is love, and looking at God over and over through scripture and in my life, I understand that there is no love without sacrifice, and there is no sacrifice without inconvenience. And so one of the key things to make sure you're keeping God is to truly make sure you're loving, make sure you're making sacrifices. And how can you make sure you're making sacrifices? You have to strategically inconvenience yourself. If you can strategically inconvenience yourself to prove, you know what, I know I have to do this, but let me make sure this is so inconvenient, but I'm going to make sure I do this, because now you prove that you actually love, because love is more than just emotion or affection. It's a decision at the core of it. I've decided to do this. I want to be with you. I do care for you. I do have affection towards you, but it's the decision that actually solidifies. The Bible tells us, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. And there was a sacrifice. And in that sacrifice, it was beneficial for the other party. So for us in marriage, having God at the core of our marriage, you have to realize that if I want to be beneficial if I want to edify my spouse and build my spouse up as she is one flesh with me, then I have to sacrifice.
I mean, I don't think that we'd be here if we didn't start our foundation where we were serving together. We were in church together. I really don't think that we'd be here. And I think his guidance has allowed us to be here too. We were talking the other day about what if the scenario, like what if you took a different job back then and didn't want, and you didn't want to move out of state.
Out of Georgia.
It's, man, it was hard to think about because it's something I mean, it sounded like a nightmare, like to have a life without you.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
you know, our paths have gone in a certain way, and I just know that that God has allowed them to happen this way.
A lot of it comes before I even met him, which ties into that season of it's just me and you, God. Because in that time, I really had to look at myself inside and out and really be molded into the wife that God was calling me to be.
Because you were already a wife. You just were a single wife. You know, you were a wife before you met me. You don't just become a wife. You were a wife a long time ago. You know?
But I had to be transformed into that person because before that it was all about me. You know, I was raised in a house of all boys and being the youngest and only girl. So, you know, I had a mindset of me, and a bit of selfishness, and I worried a lot, and if something didn't go my way, then, you know, it was a huge problem, a meltdown, or oh, my life is going to end, even though it wasn't, you know. And this is, you know, before I really had my walk with Christ. But he put me into shape, let me tell you. Yeah. But yeah, it was a lot of trying to walk on my own, you know. And I had to learn that, no, in this life, you have to walk with others, and first being Christ. And then after that, it's my husband. You know, he's the one that will lead me. I can't always make these decisions on my own or expect things to always go my way in the way that I want it, because there's somebody else that's going to be there that will help guide you, help make you make these life decisions. And it's just not about me anymore. That's one thing I really had to understand. It's not about me anymore. Yeah. And it's like, okay, God, what do you have that is the best for me?
One key lesson that I learned, probably the first lesson that I learned along this journey to becoming a wife and being married, is to either voice your expectations and then let them go. Or if you're not going to voice them, let them go. A lot of times unmet expectations then become frustrations when the other person doesn't adhere to them. And it's not fair because they have no idea, you know, that there's even an expectation put on them. In the course of our journey and our relationship, I've had to really assess that and realize, you know, where my expectations needed to either be released or communicated.
The best advice, I mean, I can give the best advice based off experience, and I would say date your friend. Because in a relationship, when you think about it, you'll never want to harm your friends, right? You want the best for your friends. You want to hang out with your friends. You want to share like intimate stories. You want to be vulnerable. You want to have some of the greatest experiences, you know. So when you look for a partner, I think that's the foundation of your relationship, as opposed to jumping into something and then trying to find out about them and then it becomes this weird thing we have to live up to of a relationship, as opposed to a friendship that, man, I genuinely like you outside of any intimate feelings. So when you are married and you're gonna have those times where, you know, say you're not feeling the most attractive, or you know, you get into an argument or a disagreement, and, you know, bills come and children come, and sometimes it can kind of get in the middle if you allow it. But let's just say that comes, and it's that feeling of like, man, we're not as intimate as we used to be. But you know what? We can get back to that, because I genuinely love your presence. I love being around you. I love laughing and doing all the stupid things I would do with my guy friends, with you as well. That is, like, to me, the most important. All the extra stuff is just added on top and can just make it a beautiful relationship. So that would be my advice. Start with friendship first.
I think it's so important to be friends. That's important because you really get to know each other, you know?
It's important to know what you want, and that you guys are both wanting the same things and want to go in the same direction. You know, a lot of times.
Just generally, that's an overview, because oftentimes you don't necessarily know how you're going to get there, but you know, this is where I want to be. And one of the things we knew is that we knew about commitment, and we knew about just sticking it out and seeing both our parents enjoy just decades of being together, of marriage. We knew that's what we wanted. There was like no option. You work through things no matter what. It's been a blessing, you know, because it brings us to today, and to be able to impart just very openly and transparently, like, this is what it looks like. All that glitters is definitely not gold, you know? But is it worth it? Absolutely, it's worth it.
I always say, you know, the toughest job I've ever had was being married. But the most fulfilling job I've ever had was being married. So if you look at it like that, it's worth every second of what you put into it. The result is 10 times that in the end. So,
you know, and also I realized that like, the longer you do it, the sweeter it gets. You know, like, we're such good friends now. I mean, we really are. And we're in a stage of our lives where our sons are all grown, and Chai, our daughter, she's halfway through high school. And so oftentimes people, they get to this season of life and they start looking at each other like, who are you? You know? It's neat. It really is, because where you still have that connectivity. It's so important, you know, and we're still learning things. This season of life presents different challenges, and you're learning different things about each other. You know, Dad has recently retired, so we're navigating through that. What does that look like?
I'm at a point where I have a lot of free time now. You know, I've always had multiple jobs. I've always been a busy guy, and now I have time. And what's so beautiful is that I have time to spend with her and my daughter Chai, and it's, you know, it's making sure those relationships continue to grow and blossom, and that we are just on a daily basis becoming more connected. And that's the great thing about this journey that we've been on and we're on right now.
I think sometimes as well, like, fighting comes from not having understanding and being honest with who you are and who you're dealing with. And I think sometimes as women and men, we expect to receive from a man what we give as a woman, and vice versa. So, like, getting the understanding of what is a woman, what is a man, and knowing that before you enter a relationship can be really helpful. You study for anything else you enter into. You know, you don't enter a new career that you know nothing about. And like, I tell a lot of my single friends, like, and they're like, okay, I'm ready for marriage. What should I do? And I'm like, okay, so if you were going to interview for a job or a career, you would know the answer to the question, okay, what are your strengths and weaknesses? You would know what you're bringing to the table. And you would not go to interview for a job as a doctor if you don't have a medical degree. You wouldn't. You would know I'm not qualified for that. So you wouldn't be interested in pursuing a man that you know you don't have the skills to bring to him. So if you know yourself, if you're honest with yourself, then a lot of the friction that I think we face would be avoidable. Knowing your temperament, knowing the natural temperament of men and women, and how that meshes together, how that's supposed to work together. And I think we got blessed in a lot of ways because we figured a lot of this stuff out after I do. But I think that the gift in that is that we can help, or hopefully encourage other people to kind of figure it out before. And you can literally make a list. Okay, I'm a very organized person. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. What kind of person would I be beneficial in a relationship with? And then it will mesh so much better together as opposed to you trying to support someone you have no interest in anything. I'm not a singer. I'm not a musician, but I love music. I have an ear for it. I love listening to it. I've always been drawn to people who are musical. It makes sense that he's a drummer and I can serve him in some way in that aspect. I can help him with that. We both are entertainers. We both are interested in those things. We don't have to have the same job necessarily, but knowing that it helps to kind of flow in purpose. So you're not so distracted that you're constantly falling into contention.
I would say really getting to the point where we understood each other's purpose, because there was a lot of clashing, because we know we're supposed to be doing something, but we're not completely understanding how we're supposed to be doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so for me, I remember there was a very, very rough patch, and I just knew Candace wasn't really happy at the moment. And, she would put a lot of pressure on me in a way that I didn't like. And I would just be like, hey, I'm trying to work. I'm trying to go to the studio. This is how it goes. This is what it looks like. I need to be there. And although that was true, I was also neglecting something that I didn't realize I was neglecting at the moment. There was a friend of mine who wasn't married at the time, and he was going to be getting married. And God put it in my heart, said, call him. I was like, I'm about to call him for what? He's not even married. He don't know what he's talking about. I'm about to call him. And so I prolonged to put it off, and he said, call him. And that friend was Will Catlett. And so I called Will, and I said, listen, man, God told me to call you. And I told him about some of the struggles we were having in marriage regarding career and trying to be on the same page. And he said, oh, yeah, that's easy, man. And then he told me this story, and he said, man, there was this MLB baseball player, MLB prospect. He was really good. He was really a high prospect. He should have been drafted top of the class. The girl at the time was like, yeah, it's either going to be me or baseball. And so he picked her. And then 5 years later, they were divorced. And I said, okay, what are you telling me, Will? He said, well, the moral of the story is you cannot separate who you are for anybody. That person has to accept you for who they are. And I said, okay, I think she's been doing a good job of that. I just think it's the how. And then we began to have a conversation, and it unfolded that the actual lack was on me, because I wasn't fully investing in her purpose while she was investing in mine. And as a husband, you should be trying to help your wife see what she's supposed to be. And then I realized, oh, wow, if I do this. And then that's when she started like 2 companies, Elise and Brooke, and she started doing interior design and decor. And then she had the women's company. I just lost it. Oh, My Love Letter. And she started having events where women were coming out, and I'm looking at all the fruit behind simply sitting down and brainstorming. And I was doing this even at moments where she was tired of her own stuff. Like, all right, I'm done. I'm like, nah, we gonna get this done. That was really big, because that was something, honestly, that's something that could have caused the end of our marriage. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize it then, but looking back, I was like, yeah, if we would have continued without me doing certain actions, we definitely would have been done.
for me, sometimes if we're having an argument or not connecting very well, I have a tendency to shut down. It's probably the worst thing that I could do for Denisha. So, we've had a number of times where that it's just, either I've gotten in my feelings or haven't responded in the ways that I should have, or really gone to the root of the issue and connected and just trying to resolve, things that are coming up. But thank God we've come through them, being able to always have that forgiveness piece in there, and realizing that we are a team together and we're not battling each other. Because I think once we start, for me, looking at it selfishly, like, oh, but I want this, but I want that, then we kind of lose the heart of, like, we are in this. We really are a team, and we're doing this together.
Yeah. I had to change because there were a lot of things in my life that I kind of structure my life by not having the kind of home, that she had, and the structure. So I had my own mindset of what I want, how I want to do it. And so I had to change a lot, to the point she testified she delivered me into the hands of God. And I think God did what he had to do.
So you see, what happened is I grew up with a home. My mother had 9 of us, 7 girls, 2 boys. So so some of the things, some of the training I got from her, so I am able to do that because she was always home taking care of us, When I saw 1 or 2 things and I talked to him and I tried with him and it's not seemed to be working, I say, okay, no, Lord, I commit him into your hands. You deal with him and I will deal with myself. And so I say, Lord, just change me. Make me what you want me to be. And I just start dealing with me and, asking God to really make me the person that he wants me to be. But again, the thing with him is he was willing to change and he's willing to learn. He was just willing and he was focused. And because of that, why we are here today. If he was not willing to change and, and we saw that, as we always say, we didn't compete with one another. We tried to complete one another instead of competing. You see, so many try to compete, so we're not into that competition,
What I've had to let go of is the idea of independence, right? I'm very independent, and I came into this thing independent, and I realized that I didn't really have a healthy understanding of what marriage was, the dynamics between a husband and a wife, and how 2 people really came together as one. And so with the idea of 2 becoming one, there is a part of you that you have to let go of. And there's a past self that has to be mourned, and you got to bury it. If you're unwilling to bury that part of you, it is going to be a struggle because you're going to constantly be reaching for the what you've known to be the norm, right? You've been this way for however many years. And this way, how you move in this way. But then you come and you connect with another person, and that person moves in a completely different way. And so if you're battling that constantly, it's going to always be a fight. It's going to be a huge challenge, but somebody has to relent. And when 2 people are willing to die to self and take on this new nature as one, it's now you're creating, okay, who am I as JT's wife? Because I'm also, everything that I'm doing is to his liking, right? It's because this suits him. I am his helpmate. I am the accompaniment to him. So it's more so just really looking at communication, how we want our household to be ran, and really, really taking the time to evaluate yourself. I love that this man is my mirror, and he's able to show me parts of myself that I may have tried to hide, but they're very visible to him. He's been able to help me to not only uncover them, but to grow in those areas. But I also had to be willing to own up to it, you know, and be okay with that vulnerability and be humble in that way in order for the shedding and the regrowth to take place.
If I can say one thing that has been just the underlying staple in our relationship has been God's grace, because
No doubt.
when we didn't know, he was covering us, you know, and we had seasons where we were just, you know, we had two 21 months apart, and then Chase, which is a little bit older, like 5 years older than the second child. So there was a long period of time where we were passing each other in the wind. And we never really allocated time for ourselves, but because our values were the same and we were just, we got to do this, we got to do that, God kept us.
Yeah.
You know I would have seasons where I would say, we need to have a date night. And he was like, date night? You know, and I was like, yeah, we need to do that. And he's like, yeah, okay, well, let's figure out somewhere to go. It was just like, kind of like whatever type of thing. But his idea truly of us spending time together was us as the family unit. Yeah. And I used to desire more, just like, well, let's just do something. But that's important. It really is. And I think particularly more so now because of the outside influences and the world we live in now. I wouldn't say this world is family oriented anymore. No. It's, you know, people are more attached to their friends, you know, outside sources, which I think has really diminished the value of the family, you know? You know, there are things, we're big advocates now of when we talk to couples talking about the importance of spending time together, because you can lose touch with one another. Sure. And it happens really quickly, but you have to figure out really just some time for you so that that connection stays strong. The kids are going to be fine. Right. That's the reality. Yeah. If you drop them off somewhere and you can trust the person, they're going to be fine. They may cry, let them cry. It's not the end of the world. They're not the first baby that cried, you know?
Early on in our relationship, I was gone a lot because of my work. And the brunt of the load was on her. So when I was able to get home and I had time, it was trying to do as much as I could to alleviate that pressure on her to have to do everything. So I kind of made myself available to do as much as I possibly could, even to the fact that I would cook and clean and do all those things so she wouldn't have to do it when she came home. You know, your children don't realize the sacrifice you make.
Until they get older and then they have kids.
Even me. Because it wasn't a sacrifice.
It wasn't. It was what you knew.
It's what I knew I needed to do as a dad and as a husband. So there was not a situation where I'm always, gosh, I got to do this. I got to do. I look forward to doing those things.
I would say to someone aspiring to what we have, to marriage, to family, don't despise where you are first. First thing, don't despise where you are. Embrace it, because where you are, you'll never be there again. And the wealth that you can gain in this place, I know people say it all the time and people are like, oh, I'm tired of hearing that, but it's so real that, like, I remember feeling like that rush beforehand. And when I look back on that time, I don't necessarily want to go back there, but I do kind of wish that I would have known to just fully enjoy it. To enjoy.
Don't pull the string.
Yeah, don't try to fast forward through these moments, because every moment you're in is a moment of development, and it's going to make you capable to withstand. Because what you see, the giggles and the laugh and the you don't remember that, you don't know that, all that stuff, it's wonderful. But the thing that you're gonna need to carry you through those times where it's the late night talks and you're figuring out and you're brainstorming together and you're helping each other go through hard things, and people are going on from this world and you're helping each other grieve, and all those things that a person that stands by your side does with you. You gain that, and you gain the foundation for that even now, even in your time now. So don't despise that time with yourself.
One lesson that I try to tell people is you're on the same team.
Yeah.
Like when you are in a relationship, when you're married, think of him as the same, like the person that's on your team. God is your coach. You're on the same team. You're going in the same direction. You're trying to win the same game. Don't play defense when he's playing offense. Don't play offense when he's playing defense. Like you're both doing this for each other and to go in the same direction and achieve the same, purpose, whatever it is in your life. That's one way of like why we don't argue so much, because I'm like, look, this man's on my team. Like he's not here to bring me down, to see me fail, to anything like that. I always tell people you're on the same team.
Yeah.
On the same team.
Same team, different positions.
Wow.
I would give advice to mothers who already have a child or children and are looking to date again. So in order to have a beautiful blended family, I think the best thing you could do is communicate. Like communication is key. So communicate with your children's father, but also communicate with your new mate that's coming into this relationship. How can we work together? Because I just remember, like, in the beginning, it was so hard for us. It was like mixing oil and water. It was so hard. The thing about blended families, it can be traumatizing for a kid. So if we don't do this thing or operate this thing right, we can really destroy this child's growth and development
or outlook on
life. And and that was my biggest thing. Like, how do I do this? And I'm telling you, I found myself in my prayer closet consistently like, Lord, I need you to change some hearts. I need you to shift this thing. I need you to make this thing right. And when I tell you, like, we have a major testimony, because there was a time all three of us, my ex and my new husband, we couldn't be in the same room together. There was just a lot of tension. But now we can have celebrations together. We can have birthdays together. We can go out to eat together. And
it was just, like you said, communication.
It was
a lack of understanding, a lack of
trust,
maturity, and it's understandable. I probably would have some of those same walls if the shoe was on the other foot. Someone being around my child that I don't really know that well, and it's my son. What are you influencing him with? So I understood it as a stepchild when my dad and my stepdad would go through things and would see what was wrong about that relationship and what, who did what right. And so that's the approach I would always take. Like, okay, I know what this is, so I'm just gonna let this little thing ride out, and then we'll be all right. Because we had a lot of stuff in common. Like we both from Philly, we both play basketball, we both understand growing up in that type of environment. And so once we were able to connect through basketball with Tyke, we were pretty much like, we started just be, having conversations about basketball. Then it turning into us celebrating his birthday together. And then, so now it's just like, oh, well, how your people doing? You
Yeah.
know, or how is your son doing?
Yeah.
You know, so that's what it is now. You know,
Yeah.
it's a great like you said, a great mix and balance. Yeah.
I would just leave with this, like, don't, for the wives or the husbands, don't take the control approach. Take the common ground approach. Like, how can we get on the same page? How can we, as opposed to, well, this is my son and this is my new husband and this is what we're doing, because that's only going to always create chaos. And the thing is, when you're in a blended family, you always want to create a calm atmosphere for the both of you guys so that it can be healthy.
So some of the things I learned in order to achieve marriage, in order to achieve, you know, the life that we're building, family, is always be intentional about everything. You know, it's very important to have a plan for the things you want, but it's also be flexible. The intentionality where that kind of comes in is, I always look at it like this. A plan is for when you have chaos and confusion. Because when you have chaos and confusion, you can always go back to your plan and go, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? But you make the plan in the times of clarity, in the times of intentionality. So whenever life happens, you go back to your plan and say, okay, these are my bearings. This is my solid ground. I think having the desire to get married and the steps to follow fed and became the intentional support or the intentional actions, and the being flexible in how things unfold is also important, because everything's not going to go according to your plan. But putting it all together and making it make sense, you have to be intentional, because when you're married, it's not about you, it's about us. It's about we. And if you spent all that time just thinking you are important or your thoughts are a certain way, and you're going to really miss it. That would be probably the biggest thing is be intentional, have a plan, and be flexible to how that plan unfolds.
For most, or I would say maybe for some women, we like to subconsciously have this control. And I would challenge you to release control. And when I say release control, I mean by like really letting God do what he says he's going to do within your marriage or within you just as a person. Because the moment you can release that control is the moment that God can really start to direct you in the path or area that you need to be directed in, whether that is in your marriage or just in your personal life. And it took me a little bit to really get that. And Mike was very diligent at dealing with me, because he did understand like how I was raised as well. And I feel like he was more spiritual than I was at the time as well.
Just at the time.
Well, he was just, you know, he was more spiritual, and so he was very diligent. But if you could do that, I would say off the bat, or you know, very early on, you'll be further. So
the advice I would give to a married couple or someone who's even thinking about getting married would be, as we've already stated, you know, keep God at the foundation of your marriage. In addition to that, understand what he's calling a marriage to actually be and what it's supposed to look like, and develop your character as much as you can prior to marriage to be that. We got married so young, so there were some things that we went through by the grace of God. There was character adjustments that happened, and then by the grace of God, it worked out. Your character is always going to be being developed, but I believe there's a point that you should be at before you enter marriage. Understanding things, knowing things, and then having adapted and completely having allowed God to impart this character in you. As a husband, as you love your wife as Christ loves the church, be willing to die for her, be willing to do all these things, and then still the things that we know men are supposed to do. I would be a studious person, to be honest. Let me see, what does this really look like? I would get advice from those who are around me. One thing that baffles me is like you have people around you, and I see people go through around big mountains. I'm like, yo, do you know these guys been married for this long? Or these, hey, that was our situation. All you had to do was come talk to us. We could have helped you out. Don't be a person who's so prideful that you can't get advice from those who have already been where you're going. Doesn't matter the age. Don't be that person. That would be a big one. I've seen so many people. I've seen divorces that shouldn't have, you could arguably say they shouldn't have happened if people could have just came together and gotten some advice, or came together and done this way. And then for the wife as well, or the woman as well, be in a place where you understand what it means to be a helper and what it means to submit. Yeah. Submitting has such a negative connotation attached to it, but it's actually one of the most powerful things you could do. It's not some weak thing. It's like, no, I understand this is, in my submission, I am actually empowering this vision. They're like, that's what the wife is. They're like the battery pack to the vision. It's like, it's charging it. So we're like, yeah, let's go. But it's in that submission that it actually empowers us to do what we need to do, and be open to this. Listen to each person, listen to your spouse, be willing again to sacrifice, to compromise. And those are just the basic things. I don't want to turn into the love doctors in here.
I think the most important thing for anybody to aspire to when they see anyone doing well in a relationship is to not desire that relationship. Is to desire what God has for you. And I think so many times we see something that is like, wow, I want that, but it's not for you. Maybe you're supposed to be greater. Maybe you're supposed to, go farther. Maybe you're supposed to know things that they didn't know sooner. So it's not necessarily that I want what that person has, or I want what that relationship has, but I want what God wants for me. And I want what God wants for me more than anything. That I will strive to do just that. If you keep your eyes on someone else's experience, oh my gosh, they have a house, cars, they have success, they have this, they have that. I wanna aspire towards that. Then you block what God has for you. You block the voice of God trying to tell you, no, go right. I want to lead you somewhere else. I want to lead you through the garden. I want to lead you through the valley. But you don't want to go there. You want to go straight to that person's success or whatever. So what I would say to anybody is, more than anything, especially men, my brothers, take time, spend time with the intent of your heart with God. What are you doing? Meditate on the word that God gave you for your life, and do it with reckless abandon. Because if you're looking at somebody and something in you is aspiring or is inspired, then it's already yours. It's already yours. Don't look at the shell. Don't look at what they have. Meditate on the word that God gave you for your life and get specific instruction. And that in and of itself will take you away from looking at them.
Everything else that you guys get, what you get from us is to embrace the journey. Don't shy away from it. No, everything is not going to be easy, but
marriage is trial.
It's trial.
It's
error.
It's challenge.
It's challenge.
Error.
But it's
wonderful though.
It's amazing. We share the best part of each other. And I don't think it could be any better, and then we constantly are reaffirmed by the words that God speaks. So it's just, sometimes it's a little overwhelming for me. Mama tell you I get a little emotional because at this age to still be learning, and to still have new experiences. It's so amazing. Just keep doing what you did at the first time. If it worked at the beginning, they say, Bill Belichick say, just do your job. Just keep doing what you're doing what needs to be improved, but don't sway from the principle. Methods change, principles never change. And the principle is the principle of honoring God by honoring your wife.
Keep first things first.
Yeah.
God first, and then everything else added. You keep God first in your marriage.
So we
So you pray.
we
you
still pray.
You get up. We still pray together.
Yeah.
We started praying together, and we are
Still
doing
praying
it,
together.
Praying together, and and when the kids come home visiting, we try to put that prayer time together with them as well.
And one of the things, like it's our first thing that we learn is forgiveness. Never go to sleep unless you deal with the issue.
As the scripture says, don't let the sun go down on your anger or any kind of misunderstanding. Deal with it, make up, go to sleep fresh, get up fresh. Keep God first.
They could say they've seen the high